the next part of our Curiosita is the doctoral students. And I say to the audience, please remember, it is a time for you to really probe the students and to get an understanding. Shaka, to you, the idea of it is certainly to project what your study is basically on, the methodology you're going to use to get there, and just an overview. But before we do that, I want to say that as a police widow myself, I understand the complexity of working in an environment where people don't see it as a systemic environment, because sadly in South Africa, we've been experiencing the way that policing is not treated systemically, and certainly not managing technology, innovation, and people systemically. And then you get someone like you, Mr. Yesufu, who shifts everyone's perspectives on that. As a Senior Superintendent of the National Traffic Police, I know that you will be targeted many times, but I respect and admire so much the exploration that you're doing, which is the alignment of the behavioral intention of traffic policing in developing socio-economic contexts. And whilst I salute you for your contribution to our country and to global policing, which is something you're an absolute hallmark of, having, I know, worked and starting your career in terms of the, I'm going to pronounce it quickly, in terms of the City of London Police, but also the Hertfordshire, that's what I said, I can't, Hertfordshire Police Constabulary in the United Kingdom. But most importantly, that you came back and you contribute so generously as a Senior Superintendent to really grow the police academy, the National Traffic Police Academy. But what I want to say is that research is something for me that is a critical part of growing a field. And the area that you're in has not always been well researched. So the fact that you have over 27 international scientific peer-reviewed publications to your name, 3 books, 23 peer-reviewed articles, and many of yours work is deposited in libraries such as Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge, Columbia, Stanford, Princeton, and my list can go on. And you've got massive citation indexes. And I speak to this not because you are one of the most humble people, so certainly not because it's something that you wear as a badge, but because of the fact that you actually are completely and utterly contributing to actually developing this really much needed field. So as a superintendent, I know that I must brace and salute. So I brace and salute you as an understanding widow. But on the other end of the spectrum, I thank you for your contribution to research. And we look forward to hearing what your doctoral study is all about, and soon calling you Dr. Superintendent. So thank you very much for joining us today and engaging with us on your very interesting topic. Thank you, Shaka.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Very much appreciated. I want to say first and foremost, I thank the Da Vinci Institution for giving me a platform to make my contribution towards the production of knowledge via research, exploring the alignment of the behavioral intention of traffic police officer within a socio-economic context. I am going to start my presentation by saying that traffic police officers play a vital role in South Africa in ensuring that all road users are safe on our roads. According to the Electronic National Administration Traffic Information System, called the ENATIS, there are over 12,958,000 registered vehicles on our roads. South Africa road network is currently consisting of about 747 kilometers, making it the longest network of roads on the African continent. Road crashes resulting in fatalities are costing South Africa over an estimate of 143 billion rands annually. This is a report provided by the National Road Safety Strategy Report dating back 2017. As a researcher, I intend to explore the alignment of the behavioral intention of traffic officers, not only in South Africa, but in comparison to the other parts of Africa where we have emergent economy. I'm referring to countries like Ghana, Kenya, and Nigeria that has a similar demographic, economic economies. I use the word emergent economy, a developing country like it is called. For my today's presentation, I'm going to quickly look at the background of my study. I will look at specific problem addressed, then moved on to ontology. Why am I interested in this study? From there on, I'll move on to my epistemology. My research is exploratory study. I will look at some few of my research questions and sub-questions. I will talk about qualitative research and why do I opt to choose qualitative design. Then I will look at the reasons or the steps I've taken so far to undertake this study. That I will term as my journey so far. Then I'll look at the sampling and the data collection. I am going to postulate my argument in a very simple dimension today by saying first and foremost that we cannot talk about behavioral intention of police officers without first talking about policing itself as an institution or organization, if you like. As we are dealing with human beings that constitute policing, a good insight into how police work as an organization must first be explained before we can start to look at the individuals that constitutes the police force itself. Individuals will come and go, as they say, while serving the police. But the policing as an institution will remain constant, and in some instances, we even outlive our lifespan. In 2019, it was reported that about 12,921 people lost their lives on our roads in South Africa due to road accident, according to Road Traffic Management Corporation report of 2019. This total number of deaths far exceeded the average road deaths rates for all middle-income countries classified by the World Health Organization. Some of the reasons they gave why these fatalities are persistent in our road are as follows: excessive speeding on our roads, driving under the influence of alcohol and drugs, drunk driving, vehicle on roadworthy conditions, failure to obey traffic signs, failure to wear seat belts, human error, poor road infrastructures. The road traffic police officers is missing among the possible factors responsible listed above. What I'm saying is that in all these factors, contributory factors that the World Health Organization enumerated above, the role of the traffic officer, as you can see, is nowhere to be found. I'll take it a step further. Over the years, I am going to argue today that it has been widely reported in the media that traffic officers are caught soliciting for bribes from motorists. Each time they do so, it is contrary to the police code of conduct. It violates our enacted laws, and citizens lost trust and confidence in the ability for them to serve and protect all of us. Traffic police officers are supposed to be, by the Constitution of our Republic, the custodians of the rule of law. They are supposed, again, to be beyond reproach. Unfortunately, this does not seem to be the case, because there are still officers who cannot do without the behavioral intention of corruption. What is the aim of my research? The aim of my research is this. My research is designed in such a way to explore the alignment of behavioral intentions of traffic police officers within a developing socio-economic context. What is the objective of my research is as follows. 1, to investigate the status of behavioral intentions of traffic police officers within a developing context, socio-economic context in Africa. By this, I mean I'll be looking at how have they fared in similar countries, Ghana, Kenya, and Nigeria to be specific, as a comparative analysis with what is being done in South Africa. Secondly, to explore the behavioral intention of traffic police officers in South Africa. Number 3, this study objective is to evaluate the influence of theory of behavioral intention in policing. And number 4, objective would be to develop a framework to enhance policing through behavioral intention. I'm going to rely on general system theory proposed to us by von Bertalanffy as far back as 1968 as my conceptual framework to ground the research study of behavioral intentions of traffic police officers in developing socio-economic context in Africa, with specific reference to South Africa. General systems theory should allow me as a researcher to engage in a meaningful way with different systems and subsystems impacting and influencing the work of traffic officers. It may also allow the researcher to understand the flow of energy, as it may create balances or imbalances within the broader system. First, I am very disturbed when I'm talking about my ontology. Why am I interested in this study? I want to be crystal clear that my views are clearly articulated. First and foremost, I am very disturbed by the high death toll rate on our roads resulting in the loss of lives. I'm of the opinion that one death in South Africa on our road is one that is too many. Secondly, as a law enforcement officer, I want to see more efficient, transparent, and accountable policing, not only in South Africa, but within the African continent. Third, I have written extensively, like you all know, on police corruption, dating back to 2012, when I presented a paper at the Commonwealth Law Conference in Durban. In 2016, I was again invited as one of the guest speakers to the National Traffic in Durban, where I spoke on police corruption as a threat to South African democracy. I also dedicated a chapter of my book I wrote in 2017, titled The Reality of Crime and Policing in the United Kingdom and South Africa. I dedicated a chapter to police corruption there. As you can deduce from my chronology, that I have been involved in discussing and presenting, warning as well that corruption is a threat to our new democracy in South Africa, prior to the state capture report in 2020. I say this in order to say that it is not because of the state capture report that I've been talking about corruption. I've been talking about corruption as far back as 2012. It is important that I mention that. My epistemology is this. As you all know, epistemology gives us a platform for us to clearly understand how knowledge is acquired. Knowledge can be acquired from two processes. First, we acquire knowledge by a priori non-empirical knowledge. These are simply known as logical truths and abstract claims. Two, we acquire knowledge by a posteriori non-empirical knowledge. This is referred to as knowledge of color or shape of a physical object, or knowledge of geographical locations. My study is exploratory research, where the researcher explores research questions that have not been previously studied in depth. If you take a closer look at previous police-related research in South Africa, little is known about traffic policing. Most researchers that you are going to find, they have over the years focused more attention on the South African police alone. Researchers like Bruce, Ford, Newham, Mina, Basio, Max, Leggett, and the whole lot of them, they have concentrated all their researches on the SAPS alone, and no attention is paid to traffic policing. Hence, the importance or the novelty of my research cannot be overemphasized. My research questions are informed with the following. First, what is your understanding of the behavioral intentions and how does this manifest itself within the traffic police? Two, how has technology improved policing? The last question, my research question will be, how does traffic police officers' behavioral intention adhere to its code of conduct? My study is a qualitative research designed in a process whereby researchers conduct research informed by life experiences, giving meaning to them as they go along. It provides the researcher with an opportunity to gain insight and to explore in depth at a given phenomenon. The phenomenological mode of inquiry is this. This research design attempts to describe the meaning of a lived experience of a person to understand more fully what has occurred. The researcher commonly uses interviews to determine the person's perspective and how he or she makes sense of the situation. This type of research is undertaken to understand things that are perceived by participants. I took that from Davishi publication 2019. The fundamental goal of the approach is to arrive at a description of the nature of the phenomenon. First one, 2013. What steps have I taken so far? Step 1. As a researcher, I am going to pose generalizations and theories from themes or categories. The second step as a researcher is that I will look for broad pattern generalization or theories from themes or classified categories. Step 3 that I'm going to take as a researcher is that I will analyze the data to form themes and categories. Step 4 will be I will employ the use of open-ended questions to participants or records feed notes. Step 5, as a researcher, I will disseminate the information gathered from all my participants. I am going to interview 15 traffic police officers from 2 provinces, that is, Gauteng province and KwaZulu-Natal province. Participants will be drawn from the following, any of the following departments: Johannesburg JMPD, Ekukuleni Metropolitan Police Department EMPD, Tshwane Metropolitan Department EMPD, Gauteng Provincial Traffic Department, and the National Traffic Police. I will also look at speaking to people or 7 traffic officers from the Durban Metropolitan Police and the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Police. Participants will reflect the hierarchical order of policing. Some of them will come from the senior managers, some of them from the ranks of supervisors, and also a good number of them will also come from the junior ranking officers. It is important that each ranks are represented amongst my participants so that we can understand their views. Their ages are going to be, of my participants, are going to be between 22 and 55 years. Length of service should be 3 years and above. The researcher will employ the use of tape recording device because my interview is going to be a semi-structured interview. It will be limited for between 30 and 45 minutes for each applicant. This will involve me analyzing all the information given to me by the participant. I will organize and prepare the data, code the data, ensure that it's consistent with emergent themes, and developing from the code description and thematic analysis, using computer programs to interpret the data collected. I will make use of the NVivo software program because it is more suitable for use in qualitative research. What is my journey so far? First, I have submitted my research proposal consisting of 3 chapters, and I have also participated in my Viva Voice defense of my research proposal successfully. Thirdly, I have submitted my literature review chapter to my supervisor. Number 4, I am attending to some of the comments raised by the research committee in preparation for my ethical clearance. Number 5, I am also looking forward to conducting my fieldwork in the respective provinces I mentioned earlier on. My conclusion in today's presentation is that I have looked at the following concepts: background of my study, specific problem that I am going to address. I have discussed the ontology, that is, why am I interested in this study. I have also touched on my epistemology. I looked quickly into my research questions and I explained that my research is a qualitative research. I also went further to elucidate why do I prefer to use qualitative design. I also explained steps taken to undertake the study, my sampling, and how I'm going to collect my data. Least by noon, it was my journey so far.
I just want to take you back to the methodology quickly and say, as you sit here trying to refine your research methodology before you embark on your field work, I wonder, from the current literature that you reviewed regarding your qualitative research that we spoke about in your proposal defense, are there any specific pointers given from literature that you need to consider or that you want to share with us that will refine and shape or refine your methodology or the way you think around that?
If I may answer that, there are no new or additional literature review that I've added to it. No.
Okay, because I think, Shaka, what almost, as you execute that, it always remain a reality at the doctoral level that one must go out and see what are the current discussions and the insight from the methodology in terms of executing that. And that normally gives you a very good insight into the kind of questions that one can ask that you top up. And I see that you've completed your literature review. So I was just curious, but happy to connect with you about that outside this forum.
Oh, thanks, Professor Kluper, for raising that. Thank you so much.
Dewald?
Thank you, sir. And thank you, sir, for speaking to you and your extensive experience. My question is, if you look at the 3 layers of people you're interested in interviewing, and that is in 5 provinces, am I right in saying you're going to interview 15 people? That's to say, 1 from each level per province?
Thank you, David, for your question. I'm not going to be going to 5 provinces. I am going to be going to 2 provinces, Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal.
I see. Okay. Secondly, have you thought of looking at behavioral economics as opposed to general systems theory as a underlying theory?
No, I have not looked at the economics theory. I felt the behavioral, the general systems theory will be much more relevant to my topic, because I'm going to be looking at an organization, a system, and that is in an organization and behavioral aspect of things, not from the individual aspect of things, because for the past, researchers have always been researching on deviancy from the individual, but I'm looking at the systemic and organizational behavior encapsulated in the police culture itself. That indeed, if you are a police, there are certain cultures that are not known to the outside world. So I've not looked at the economic theories. I felt it was much more appropriate for me to employ the general systems theory and also the theory of behavioral intention. The theory of behavioral intention as my theory informing it, and the general systems theory as my conceptual framework.
That makes sense to me. What does intrigue me is in the sentences you use behavior of people, and then later on you include the economic principles that the people follow. And I'm wondering if behavioral economics then doesn't make sense.
I think Dr. Scholz is making a very valid point, Shaka, that you need to perhaps consider looking into, because remember that even if you choose not to go with it, you would need to justify why you refer to behavior and haven't done a behavioral theory. So remember, what you choose to include is, we can never include everything, but you will have to justify why you didn't include that if you don't. And I think the point to take from this is that, this is what will happen in an examination process as well, where you will get people bringing in things, and you've just got to make sure that the way you've contextualized what you have done has been able to justify why you do or don't include certain things. So, because I also do think something on behavioral is something quite critical, because you do mention it a lot. But I also think if you're able to justify things, but you would need to have to justify why you haven't included those and why you've included what you have, just as an overall comment, not specifically to your study, just as a research comment in general.
Okay, thanks for that. I've noted your comments from David and yourself.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, Dr. Depoy Saliers.
Thank you, Marla, and thank you, Shaka. Shaka, in your you said in at some point, I can't remember where, but you were talking about the alignment of behavioral intentions, but you didn't say usually one thing is aligned with something else. So I just want to know and understand what is the behavioral intentions aligned to. So I just need some clarity around that, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your question. You see, this is like a synopsis into my complete work. It is actually aligned to the police code of conduct. If I take you to at the very beginning, I mentioned what it is aligned to. And it is aligned to the police code of conduct. When I started, basically, the police code of conduct serves as a guidance. It tells every sworn officers what they are supposed to do within the confines of the law. So the behavioral intention is aligned to the police code of conduct.
So by the research aims to explore the alignment of behavioral intentions of traffic police officers. And then maybe say with the code of conduct or with the police code of conduct within developing socio-economic context, because then it will make sense. Because as it's stated there, the part that it is what it is aligned with is actually missing from that sentence.
Thank you so much for raising that point. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think I agree with Dr. De Poitelier. It's very important, and even if it's not to what you're saying and you want to make it to something else, alignment needs to be to something. So, even if your study unfolds and it's not to, say, the code of conduct or whatever, and it's to something else, it just must be to something, which I think is quite important. And this is also the point where if you look at your objectives, you're bringing up behavior in objective 1, in objective 2, 3, and 4. So I think you're going to have a difficult time if you don't bring in some of the behavioral theory to argue this point, because every objective speaks to it as well as your aim. So I think that's just something to potentially explore with your supervisor and to just think about, because it is going to be important that if you don't go that route, that you justify why you don't go that route, because I do think it will otherwise come back to you if you don't. So remember, the purpose of Curiosity is for people to give you guidance of things they might see so that it doesn't come back at a later stage, etc. I see there is one more question. So, Prof. Singh.
Shaka, thank you for your presentation. The slide, looking at the objectives of the study, it is quite clear to me that your design is an exploratory study. So it's an exploratory design. What I want to ask you is, if you look at objective 1, you want to compare what the status quo is in 3 different developing countries. So I want to ask you, are you then later, after your data collection, are you going to compare not just the status quo, but what perhaps is best practice in amongst the police?
Yeah. Yes. You see, there's a difficulty in comparing best practice, because first and foremost, I'm not going to be traveling to these countries. I'm not going to be traveling to Ghana, Kenya, and Nigeria. It's just for me to draw a comparative, a secondary data information from what they are doing there. I am going to be focusing more on South Africa. So, for example, I am not in a position to talk about best practice in Kenya without me actually going there to see it for myself or speaking to people in Kenya authorities. I am only limited to South Africa, but I am using these 3 developing countries because of the similar demographics they have as emergent economies. And I'm looking at it from a secondary data analysis by looking at previous researches that have been done in these countries, by relying on some of the publications that our colleagues over there have done. For example, Ghana. What is wrong with Ghana policing? What is wrong with Ghana policing? Can we then look at in comparative way, is it similar to what is going on here? So I can only talk about best practice from a South African perspective because I am here.
Thank you, Shaka. I think then we must be clear. It seems you're not going to do a comparative study. Yours is, it's just for the status quo, as I mentioned, where for objective one, you are doing that comparison. But your findings and your recommendations and your discussion would be what you explored and what emerged from the data in respect of South Africa. Thank you.
Thanks, Prof. Singh. I think what we should consider, Prof. Klopper, through you as the chair, is maybe that myself, Dr. Deploy Salias, Prof. Singh, and you, and obviously Shaka's supervisor, if we perhaps sit with Shaka and just work a little bit through these objectives, because, for example, I think the same problem Franzel had with the AIM, I've got with objective 3, because you can't evaluate the influence of theory on behavioral intention. I think, again, we're going to have to just look in the context. Shaka, I'm going to ask Letta, sorry, it was a very complex discussion on a complex topic. So Letta is going to see how she could graphically represent this. And Shaka, you'll have to tell her if she has graphically represented this for you. Letta, over to you. Thank you so much.
Great stuff. Thank you, Dr. Kuhnen. So we spoke about the fact that road safety is critical for Africa. 12,921 lives lost. That is 12,921 lives too many. If we look at policing, it's done by human beings, but the institution remains, and we have to take that into account as well. People die on our roads because of speeding, driving under the influence, the road conditions, not wearing any seatbelts. But if you look at the research, traffic cops are not in there. The traffic officer is not in there. So that creates a very interesting question. Unfortunately, corruption is still happening, and we have to think about how does the intention of the police officer influence this. Exploratory research is a really important issue, Shaka, specifically for you on a personal level. At the moment, little is known about traffic policing, and you're going to be using interviews to get how people are making meaning from the personal experiences that they've had. You've spoken about the particular interviews that you want to run, 22 to 55 years old, more than 3 years in service in 2 different provinces and at various levels in the police, and the process that you're going to follow: generalizations, patterns, analysis, open-ended questions, and then disseminating the information. We've spoken about the general systems theory to look at the system within the institution. And I've got the 3 research questions there. I'm not going to read through them. We've captured them. But I think to think about going from here is what about behavioral economics, and just relooking at those objectives to make sure that we've got them right. And that is the visual summary of this section. Dr. Kuhnen, back over to you.
Thank you so much, Letta. Shaka, I hope you like your visual representation. We will be sending this out after the session to everybody, as well as obviously to our guest speakers who have given of their time and of their energy. It's never an easy space to sit in, Shaka, to be the doctoral candidate. It's always a tough space because you've got so many different people's views, and we never satisfy everybody. We can just work towards justifying our choices. So thank you for your time into this. And to Giselle, I look forward to seeing all of you next month at the end of September. And just wishing you all a happy spring day this week for those of you that are in the Southern Hemisphere. For those in the Northern Hemisphere, as you welcome autumn, we are coming back into the summer season. So have a wonderful evening. Take care, stay safe, and thank you for joining us.